This podcast is part of the Big Heads Media Podcast Network. Go to bigheadsmedia.com for more great podcasts.
Welcome to Brew Crime. I'm Mike.
And I'm Beck.
And I'm Nina.
All right, for this episode, we're going to do Evil Parents. So I think the first story is going to be from Nina. So let's go with that.
Mm-hmm. So before I kind of go into my beer, I'm going to give you a little taste of who I'm going to talk about. I'm going to talk about Josef Fritzl. A couple things everyone should know. I hate him. Mm-hmm. You should hate him. Mm-hmm. And he's a fucking sack of shit.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, perfect.
Good.
Perfect.
Covered. Okay, let's talk about the beers. So,
the beer is from Taul.
Bless you. And it's Black Malts and Body Salts. It's an Imperial Black Indian Pale Ale brewed with coffee. I do realize, based on my extensive palate and how great of beer knowledge I have, that I will hate this beer. However, the reason I had picked it is because Josef Fritzl literally needed to be on fucking bath salts to think what he was doing was right. And I'll get into talking about it later, about why he thought it was right. AKA, he thought it was consensual with what was happening. It wasn't. I'm going to get Mike to crack the bottle open and let's taste it. I will have the first mini pour.
Nope. That was actually more than I thought you'd take. Percent is that?
9.9%.
Yep, that makes sense.
All right, this beer is a super deep brown, not quite black. It's got a light brown head. Definitely got a lot of coffee on the nose.
Wow.
Some roasted malts. Maybe a little bit of cream on the nose.
Do you want to read this, Nina, or should I read it?
I'll read it.
Yeah, you should.
Is there any daddies in it?
It's something else.
While abstaining from being schizophrenic, this beer is everything except all the best put together in the toughest balance between hops, coffee, light, and dark malts.
Mm-hmm. It's complicated beer, and no one understands it but its woman.
Okay.
All right, well, let's talk about the beer first.
You can.
Definitely, there's lots of coffee and roasted malts, maybe some chocolate and toffee, some caramel. It's definitely sweet. Definitely a little bit of roast in there. There's some bitterness. It's nice. It's definitely more of a stout to me than it is a black IPA or a Cascadian Dark Ale, if you're on the West Coast here, but it's really nice. Am I the only one?
It's painfully strong.
Oh, I don't find it strong at all. I find it really smooth.
Wow.
All right.
So, before we kind of go into the crimes, I guess I should say that Josef Fritzl is mostly known for. I'm going to obviously go into just a little bit of a background of him. First of all, I hate him. I'm not sure if I already said that.
Maybe once.
Mm-hmm. He was born on April 9th in 1935 in Amstetten, Austria.
Okay.
We're going to go with that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds right. Yeah.
For his upbringing, he grew up in Tres Jolie. I don't know. He was raised by his working mom. His dad left when he was about 4 years old. He had essentially no further contact with his dad, named Senior Josef Fritzl. Actually fought in World War II, and he was killed in action. In 1944, Josef Fritzl was married to Rosemarie. She was 17 when they got married. They had 2 sons and 5 daughters.
Oof.
It's a lot of kids.
Yeah, it's a lot. But I mean, I guess maybe during that time it's not that
Yeah,
much,
at the
but
time it was normal, but now it's like, woof.
Yeah. He went to school for electrical engineering. He retired when he was 60 in 1995. Really nothing too exciting to report for this. Before we start obviously talking about what he's most famous for, he did have a little bit of previous criminal history. He broke into the house of a 24-year-old nurse whose husband was away. Josef was holding a knife to her throat, threatened to kill her if she screamed. He obviously let her live. She was assaulted. He did get arrested for this. He did serve a 12-month sentence for this assault, which I do not understand why it was only 12 months. And then he also had a couple of arrests or just citations for indecent exposure. I don't want to say that those crimes aren't bad and obviously horrifying for the victims, but what he subjected his own daughter to, Elisabeth, who we'll get into, is, I just think, unspeakable. So Elisabeth was born on April 6th in 1966. There were reports that Fritzl started abusing her as early as her being 11.
Yuck.
Yep. It seemed, from most what I can find, that any of the abuse from all of his children was just centered on her. I did see a report that said he had to have her, and I quote, "It was like tasting the forbidden fruit."
Ugh. Yeah, no, sorry, that's gross. Ugh. The shades of my story, though.
Yeah. So, long story short, I'm going to focus, of course, on the rape, kidnapping of his daughter, Elisabeth. And she was actually held against her will for 24 years.
Fuck.
24 years. So that's literally 6 years less than I've been alive. Like, just to put that into perspective.
Yeah.
That is, I can't even. Okay, so for Elisabeth, obviously, I said she was born on April 6th in 1966, which would mean that right now she's the same age as my mom is, which is not that old, you know? Like,
No.
that seems so recent and
Current.
close to home, I guess, because, you know? Mm-hmm. When she was 15, she started taking some courses to become a waitress. And actually, in 1983, she did end up running away from home and hiding in Vienna with one of her friends. This was to escape the abuse from her father. Mm-hmm. However, she was only able to get away for about 3 weeks before the police found her and actually returned her back to her parents.
Jesus Christ.
So, obviously, I'll talk about what happened to some of the things that happened to Elisabeth while she was being held captive. But I think it's really important to talk about the steps that Josef took to actually carry out his evil plan. He had to get an official permission to construct a cellar as far back as 1970. So she would have been 4 years old when he started this master plan.
Wow.
To construct a cellar which was underneath his current house. There's definitely different records of him hauling out dirt, stone, just anything that's underground stuff to create this. They were working under the pretense that the reason he needed this and wanted to construct this is because, of course, during that time, nuclear bunkers were definitely a thing. Mm-hmm. And it was under the pretense that he was building a safe house for his family. That is not true. No. His family members actually did not know this was happening, but to officials, he did have to get the permit. So his family, his wife, who's living upstairs and his kids upstairs, did not know that the daughter was buried under them.
That's fucking nuts.
24 years. 24 years. She literally lived under the footsteps of her mom, who was searching for her because she thought her daughter was missing. Yeah, it's just insane. There was a total of 8 doors that actually had to be opened before you reach the cellar.
Jeez.
Yeah. I mean, I'll post a couple pictures that people can obviously come, take a look at. To me, it honestly just looked like a tomb. It was awful. So let's go right into it. So when Elisabeth turned 18 in 1984, he asked for the first permit in 1970. So this is 14 years in the making that he's been planning to do this.
That's crazy, because that really shows some
premeditation,
yeah.
Yeah. So essentially, he needed help carrying a door downstairs, and he asked his daughter for help. She helped him, obviously, obliged. And he ended up actually having a towel that was soaked in ether that he held to her face until she was unconscious. And from here, he threw her into the chamber. From here, her mom obviously filed a missing persons report because, Elisabeth wasn't home, not sure where she was. What ended up happening, kind of stalling the investigation, is that a letter was received claiming to be from Elisabeth, saying that she was tired of living with her family and that she was going to go live with a friend and for the family not to look after her. The way that the letter was formed is essentially that she'd run away and joined a cult. Obviously, this letter was not actually written by her.
Yeah.
I guess I shouldn't say that. She did write it, but under coercion from her dad, who's making her write it, because they were able to look at the handwriting and all of that jazz.
When it's written under coercion or whatever, it's not really written by you.
It isn't, right? Like, so not at all. So over the next 24 years, he visited Elisabeth in the chamber a minimum of 3 times a week. He would bring food and other supplies like that. There were reports that over those years, she obviously had to endure being trapped there in the cold, be in the damp. There was also rats. Sometimes water around the walls would form in large quantities, and she had to use towels to soak it up. Of course, in the summer, it's the exact opposite, because there is no ventilation. There wasn't any windows or anything. It was a sauna. So essentially just a death trap either way.
Yeah.
In one of the reports, after Elisabeth is freed, which I'll get into how that happened, she actually gave an 11-hour confession to the police, or testimony of the accounts. Obviously, this was not filmed in like 11 straight hours, but there was like reports where she was saying about how she would, with her bare hands, have to catch rats to get them out.
Jeez.
I mean, I couldn't imagine doing that under any fucking circumstance. Mind you, in distress of living in this tomb under my parents' house being, I don't know. I couldn't even.
Yeah. It's awful.
Yeah, it's definitely awful. Fritzl did say that originally when Elisabeth was brought down, because he needed to gain her trust in a sense first to realize that it's actually like this is happening, she even had a chain around her waist. For the first 6 to 9 months, he couldn't quite remember how long he made her wear a chain around her waist so that she wouldn't run out when he came at the door.
Wow.
It's awful. He obviously sexually abused her. Sometimes she was raped and assaulted several times a day.
He is a fucking monster.
He estimated on the second day of his incarceration that he figures he raped her at least 3,000 times during this time.
Poor woman.
Poor child. At
Well,
this, I mean,
Child,
18.
yeah.
But she's by the end, she's not even a child. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah,
right.
and it just it gets worse.
yeah.
He ended up having 7 children with her. One, there was a set of twins. The boy, I think it was a girl and boy twin. The boy twin passed away shortly after. What's important, obviously it's incest, obviously, you know, rape and everything, but these kids were born in the cellar. He gave her literally a book and Tylenol to let her figure out how to give birth to these kids.
Jesus Christ, that is nuts.
Out of,
You need a little more than that.
I think it speaks to this her strength that she survived this. And, you know, I think obviously there's always a risk with having a child and having the child, you know, die and all of that after childbirth. But to do this by yourself when you're 18, 19, 20, living in these conditions with this type of trauma and whatever is kind of incredible, and I think a true testament to the strength that she just has.
And I'm sure she knew nothing about real childbirth when she was actually put into this
A child.
dungeon.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what's interesting about this, and I couldn't quite figure out why the certain selections were made. However, 3 of the, so as I said, she had 7 kids. One tragically passed away after birth. 3 other kids, he one by one would actually take out and leave in front of the family home with a note saying that, you know, because she's in a cult, they can't take care of the kids, so she's asking her parents to raise him.
Fuck.
So 3 of the children grew up right above their mother in the family home, while 3 were left downstairs with her.
Wow, that is just so messed up. You would not expect that to happen.
I can't even speculate what, this is just such a out of the box kind of scenario. I don't know.
And what happened with the other 3, you know?
Why did the other 3 stay downstairs? Why couldn't he have done that with all 6 of them?
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's weird.
So as I did mention, Elisabeth did get free in 2008. Obviously, I know some of the questions for that is like, well, how the hell did that happen? I mean, 24 years is a lifetime.
Yeah, it is.
So her oldest daughter, who in 2008 was 19 years old. So to just kind of like set, I don't know if necessarily set the scene, but to put it into perspective, she's 19, has never seen the outside world, never fresh air, never seen sun on her face, nothing other than literally the tiny cement tomb under the house, which is where she grew up. The oldest daughter's name is Kirsten. She became gravely ill, which I don't want to say is expected, but I don't think comes to a shock to many.
Mm-hmm.
Somehow, Elisabeth was able to convince her father to take Kirsten to the hospital. Of course, I no idea how she was able to convince him to do this. He did end up taking Kirsten to the hospital, and her being unresponsive, he didn't really have a full story of like where he just kind of found her. There were media reports and news reports that heard about this, and he was actually on the media with the news reporters asking for the mother to come forward to give us information about this child so they can save her life.
Oh, what
All
a
while
monster.
knowing that it was his
Child / grandchild.
Yeah, grandchild,
Yeah.
his daughter.
Yeah.
Anyways, so in this tomb-like environment that they lived for 24 years, they did have a television. When Fritzl came back, Elisabeth, obviously after seeing the reports, asked, like, let me go see her in the hospital. And she thought essentially, if there's any way we're going to save her, I need the police. I want to see her, right? So he listened to her. He took his own daughter, Elisabeth, who he held captive for 24 years, got her in the car. And imagine her shock, too. 24 years. Same like her daughter, Kirsten. You know, this is her first time outside in that long amount of time. Like, no fresh air. It's a different lifetime, 24 years. Right? Like 2008, I imagine, was very, very different than,
They made movies about
1995.
that. They made movies about going into like a biodome, like, and just disappearing forever, right?
Yeah.
So it's weird. It's crazy.
Yeah, so when Josef arrived with Elisabeth to the hospital, immediately there was suspicions, like something funky is going on here. They did end up separating them, and that was kind of a game over for Josef Fritzl. Yeah, so this kind of leads us to the bath salts comment I made earlier. Of course, originally he said that he was not guilty, and under his idea that this was a consensual relationship with his daughter. So the trial started on March 16th in 2009. So 11 years ago, on the first day of testimony, they essentially started watching the 11 hours of recordings of Elisabeth talking about the ordeal, talking about things that happened to her children, because they were also not exempt from abuse.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because of just how heavy everything was, they actually could only watch it in 2-hour segments, pause so that everyone could take a break, have a breather. I couldn't imagine that you yourself cannot just listen to more than 2 hours of this. Imagine her living it.
Yeah, no, thank you. That is awful.
Yeah, absolutely awful. Prosecutor obviously spoke about just the conditions to the judge and to the clergy that were there, just to kind of give more weight and kind of explain. So the cellar was in height 5'6".
Yikes.
So
That's not
I'm
tall
I'm
enough.
5'8". So
Yeah.
that would mean
I'm
I would
5'10".
I would not stand up straight for
Yeah.
24 years.
Yeah.
Which
None
is
of us would.
no, it's insane. So Elisabeth's son, who was in the cellar, he was also 5'8".
Yeah.
So obviously his development was stumped, but literally never stood up a day, when he was fully grown, which I don't even know you can say he fully grew at 5'8", based on the conditions that he was in, everything.
Well, even if he did, he probably had a hunch, because since you're at a certain height, you'd be crouching over
Compacted,
and everything, right?
yep.
Yeah, you'd be compacted for sure.
How old was he? I'm sorry.
I did not get what his age was, but the
Okay.
oldest one was 19, so under 19.
Okay.
I feel like it was 16 something, but I wouldn't want to be quoted on that.
Even still, that's pretty much like you don't grow a lot after that age.
For a boy, maybe.
Some boys do.
But still, 5'8's tall.
Yeah.
But I think so, obviously the discussion is about the height, but it's more just the conditions
Yes.
of what they dealt with. So as I mentioned, the trial started on March 16th. Originally, Fritz did plead not guilty. On March 18th, so this is 2 days after the trial started, Elisabeth actually attended the criminal trial against her father, but she was in disguise, sitting in the crowd.
Wow.
Why I bring that up is Rudolf Mayer, who was the attorney, confirmed that Fritzl actually did recognize her. And to quote, his eyes met hers, and he actually ended up changing his plea deal and pled guilty to everything.
Wow.
So March 19th, so literally 3 days after the trial started, he was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. And he's currently serving his sentence out in Austria. What was very interesting to me, or not interesting, but maybe confusing, is he saw her, and after seeing all the 11 hours of her testimony of what her perspective was and what was going on, and how vastly different it was of what he says he perceived it as, that he felt bad and just decided to plead guilty. I don't understand. How can you be a monster since literally 1970 potentially planning this, and now in 2009 all of a sudden you switch in 3 days in court? That's just insane. I don't think I'll ever be able to fully understand what this monster thoughts. I have no idea.
Yeah.
I don't think I can ever get into the mind of any of these monsters, but yeah, who knows?
No. And then I guess lastly, what kind of ties into the story a bit is a few years ago, I believe it was end of 2015, maybe beginning of 2016, a movie named Room came out, which is loosely based on the story. Brie Larson is in it. She actually won an Academy Award for her lead actress in this movie.
Captain Marvel is in it?
This was her before Captain Marvel.
Wow.
Yeah, and it was essentially girl kidnapped, impregnated by her attacker, and then the child living, and then a story about how they escaped. But, I mean, from the name, you understand that she also lived in a room with her child in captivity and all of that. So I definitely recommend to check out that movie. It definitely made me feel a lot of different types of ways. But yeah, that is my story.
Wow.
I've definitely seen a documentary about this, and I'm sorry I can't remember what it's called, but I do remember...
It's like the Monster of Austria or something like that.
There's one that I remember part of it because it's like scarred into my memory where Josef and his wife go on a vacation with a couple friend that's theirs.
While the daughter's Elisabeth's locked up.
Yeah, and she's locked up, and Josef buys this like skimpy dress when he is out with, and it's just him and it's the other husband from the couple, and he's like, oh yeah, it's for my mistress. He's telling this friend of his, he's like bragging that this skimpy dress is for his mistress, and it's for his fucking daughter that he's kidnapped.
Yeah, I mean, essentially he just lived his life like nothing ever happened. Yeah. His daughter ran away in a cult, but he just essentially made her his sex slave and abused her for 24 years, did who knows what with her kids.
Yeah.
But I think that speaks to that, like, the psychopath, right?
Yeah, totally. He's vile. So disgusting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Craziness. Mm-hmm. And also he looks terrifying.
Yeah.
Like he looks like he would be a bad person, and obviously he lived up to his charming looks.
Yeah, no shit.
Anyways.
All right.
Cool. Thanks.
Get ready for the next one.
Yeah. This episode of Brew Crime is brought to you by Podcorn.com. Podcasters produce their shows because it is their passion, but that passion comes with a lot of costs, be it audio hosting, websites, editing, writing, equipment, or even merchandising. You can only spend so much money on your show before you need to find a way to recover some of that cost. It used to be that only massive podcasts could get ads on their shows, but now there is a service, Podcorn.com, for podcasts of all sizes. Podcorn makes the connection with the companies looking to promote their brands and give a portal for podcasters to make the connection. From here you could pitch all kinds of things like pre-roll ads, mid-roll ads, contests, guest interviews, and even other types of ads. The best part is you're able to set your own prices. We've been able to work with a bunch of brands like Best Fiends, Ballsy, Hi-Fi Candle Studios, and directly with Podcorn itself. yourself. The best part of Podcorn is that there is no middleman, as you get to interact with the brands directly. Podcorn also protects and supports your show to ensure that you are compensated for the work that you do for these brands. We would not be as successful as we are today without the amazing help of the team at Podcorn. So if you're looking to take your podcast to the next level, make sure to head to podcorn.com now and sign up. You will not be disappointed with your choices. Explore sponsorship opportunities and start monetizing your podcast by signing up at podcorn.com/podcasters. Also, you can find the link for this in our show notes. What says good parenting like rape, molestation, incest, and murder?
Oh my
This
God,
is the story of Marcus Wesson and his poor family. So my pairing for this
I don't know how I
story-
feel about that title. That's a little much.
Exactly. My beer pairing is Guardian IPA from Strange Fellows Brewing out of East Vancouver. This is a beer that comes at 6.5% alcohol.
It's our weakest beer yet today.
It probably is. Jesus.
In this strange account of the eternal battle between good and evil, the valiant knight is our hero, destined to deliver us from the dragon's fiery breath that is our thirst. Our bold and flavorful Guardian IPA, hazy and thirst-quenching, with a super juicy and citrusy dry-hopped character, will make the slaying of any dragon most enjoyable.
It's a definitely cloudy orange color. Sort of a light off-white head. Very fluffy head though. Lots of citrusy and tropical notes on the nose. Kind of a sweet nose. I definitely poured it too hard because I have way too much head in my glass. It's definitely, it's got some fruity notes. It's kind of a citrusy, light tropical, bit grainy. Not a lot of bitterness. Semi-sweet. It's easy drinking. It's not exactly what I expect from a New England IPA, but it's also not, it's not bitter like West Coast or anything. So it's kind of in between. It's a really nice beer. What do you think, Nina?
I don't hate it.
That's a glowing thing.
It's definitely crispy kind of. Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, I don't love it, but I don't hate it. Yeah, that's
What about
all I
you?
can say about it.
Let's start from the beginning where this monstrous father came from. Marcus Wesson was born on August 22nd, 1946 in the state of Kansas. His parents, Benjamin and Carrie Wesson, had 4 children, and Marcus was the oldest. The family were devout followers of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, and it was claimed that the mother, Carrie, was a religious fanatic. It's funny how this Seventh-day Adventist Church comes up so often.
Yeah, not a good start.
As can happen with so many, Benjamin may have talked the talk, but he sure as shit did not walk the walk, as he was an alcoholic in a church that did not allow alcohol.
That's problematic.
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
He was also a horrible child abuser and ended up abandoning his family when Marcus was still a child. Before his father left, though, it is known that he beat the children with electrical cords and would lead the family on Bible studies. This just sounds like an amazing way to raise a good, stable child.
I think our definitions of good and stable are very different. But I get it. I get what you're picking up or what you're throwing down.
Yeah, I'm being full of shit.
Snarky.
It was said that Marcus was a pretty good singer, though, as a child, and per some of his relatives, his favorite game to play as a child was Preacher. This has some ominous tones to it. Moving forward to the early 1960s, the family would leave their Kansas home and move to San Bernardino, California. School was not working for Marcus, so he dropped out at 17 and joined the army. He'd be stationed over in Europe and either be a medic or an ambulance driver. Sources did not agree on this fact, so I do mention both. We don't really know what it was.
Yeah, that's always frustrating.
Yeah. In the end, he would be honorably discharged and he would move back to California, but this time he would end up in San Jose. It's like, what the hell did he get honorably discharged for? He would waste no time once back in the U.S., though, as he would meet a married woman, Rosemary Celerio, and they would get involved with each other. Rosemary was not just a married woman, but also a woman that was 13 years older than Marcus. She also had 8 children from a previous relationship, but this did not deter Marcus. And as soon as Rosemary left her husband, he moved into the house.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot of I don't want to say baggage, but baggage.
A lot of dependents.
Oh, 8 kids, man.
Marcus was in a hurry to join the family as he felt that the family needed a shepherd to guide them. Man, was he full of himself. Like a fucking shepherd to guide them. Seemingly 1971 would be a happy time in the household as Marcus and Rosemary would have a son of their own. But this 25-year-old was becoming less interested in his wife and more interested in her 8-year-old daughter, Elisabeth.
Oh, no.
He would hold a home marriage ceremony with Elisabeth as he would
Oh
claim
my
that
God.
God had told him personally that Elisabeth was to be his wife.
Oh, that's no.
This was the point that he removed Elisabeth from her school and started personally homeschooling her. This screams of grooming, as when she hit her 12th birthday, Marcus would begin to sexually abuse her.
Oh, God. That poor child.
This household was a very abusive one, though, and Rosemary would only insist that Marcus did not legally marry Elisabeth until she was 15 years, the legal age at the time.
Well, but he's already married. He can't legally marry her
House
anyway.
married, not legally married.
Yeah.
It was a house ceremony. This would come to pass as Elisabeth would become pregnant at age 14.
Oh,
so they married the instant she was of age.
14.
Marcus would father another 10 children with Elisabeth
Oh
before
my
her 26th
God.
birthday. One child escaped a life of abuse, though, as it died as an infant. I'm sorry, but when it comes to that point, it escaped. Because imagine growing up in this horrible situation.
It's horrible either way. You can't word that information nicely.
No. The family would continue to grow as Elisabeth's younger sister would leave her own 7 children with Elisabeth and Marcus. Of course, with all of these children, you would expect Marcus to hold down a steady job, wouldn't you? But of course, this guy is scum, and he would live off of welfare while he could easily have worked. He would also force his adult children to work, and all of their money would come back to him. He would finally be charged with something in 1989, and that would be a welfare fraud and perjury. Lack of money and a large number of children would see that the family living in all kinds of rundown homes, boats, and whatever vacant home they could find. Of course, what would you expect from this guy other than more abuse? He would ensure that Elisabeth was not able to help raise the children so that he can control the whole family even more. At this point, none of the children were able to go to school, and Marcus would teach them all.
How convenient for him.
But that's the other thing. It's just like, how do you like do anything? And why is he even bother teaching them? What is the point? If he's going to brainwash and tell them whatever he wants, like.
Well, that's what he's teaching them, though. It's brainwash. He's not teaching them the curriculum.
It's insane.
There we go. But of course, he would not teach the regular school curriculum.
No.
He was too busy teaching them his own handwritten version of the Bible. I would actually like to get my hands on this Bible, as he claimed Jesus Christ was a vampire, and I no more. Because, like, what the fuck?
A vampire. Okay, got it.
Yeah. The whole family was completely obedient to every whim of Marcus. Now, of course, with abuse and brainwashing, this is not a surprise. Marcus's idea of shepherding, after all, was to rule the family with an iron fist. Even more disturbing, he would insist the whole family called him Master or Lord, insisting that he was actually God. Doomsday was coming for this family, according to Marcus, and he had plans for the end times that included marrying more of the girls in the family. Now, with plans for the girls of the family, he would not have the boys of the family having sexual attractions to their family, so he separated them from the women.
Of course.
He would move to even younger girls in the family, sexually abusing 3 of his nieces and 2 of his daughters, and would marry them in home ceremonies. These girls ranged from the age of 7 to 9. And remember, he's already have a ton of kids with his current daughter wife. This man was a disgusting monster. The abuse would continue to escalate as the family got older. He would still beat them with electrical cords, but he moved on to baseball bats and his fists for the smallest of slights he perceived. One son was beaten for a full month straight because he had the gall to steal a spoonful of peanut butter from his own house. He was said to have beaten a 1-month-old infant Jonathan because he would not stop crying until the point the child's leg started to bleed. The outside world was so full of sin that Marcus protected his family from that sin by ensuring none of them had contact with the outside world. One day his daughter Sophina wanted to leave the home instead of doing her homeschooling. Her punishment was to be stabbed in the chest.
Oh my God.
Can you see overreaction much?
Did she survive?
I think so, yes.
Jesus.
The family was always on the move, but they would end up living out of a boat for some time. The boat had nothing, no water, no electricity, and no real sunlight, as Marcus forbade the family from leaving the lower decks of the boat. The outside world was not allowed to know that they were on the boat. If he had to go ashore for supplies, he would force the women to row him ashore. After this horror show, they would move to an army tent for the next 12 years.
I don't even know what to say to that.
Yeah. After the tent, they ended up in an old school bus. Of course, this would not have the necessary amenities like most of their housing to this point. They would move up and down the California coast in this bus, likely trying to keep off the radar. They would end up purchasing an old office building in Fresno, California. Marcus had an affinity for David Koresh, who would end up causing the Waco siege in Texas. When the siege was taking place in 1993, he would not take his eyes off the TV that they had at that time. He would tell the family, quote, "This man is just like me. He is making children for the Lord." And like Koresh, Marcus hated the police or any law enforcement agency. He would even force the mothers to go into suicide pacts that stated that if the government ever came to separate the family, the mothers would kill the children and then kill themselves.
Wow. Jesus.
Funny enough, I do not see mention of him in these plans. So he didn't discuss him dying at all. It was all the mothers killing the kids and then killing themselves. Mm-hmm. And these plans were discussed monthly. The women of the family were forced to dress in long skirts and headscarves. They had to always walk behind Marcus, and they had to stay silent whenever in public. If they ever attempted to talk to a man, they would be beaten. His control over the women was so complete that he would force them to bathe him, wash his dreadlocks, and even would have them scratch his armpits if he demanded it.
That's random.
Yeah, he was a gross dude. Mm-hmm. It would be reported in court that Marcus fathered up to 18 children with at least 7 women or girls, and 5 of these girls were his daughters. Leading up to March 12th, 2004, Marcus had made it known to his extended family that they would be moving to Washington State to be closer to his parents. But on this date, portions of his extended family rebelled against Marcus and would head to the compound where the family was living. They would demand that he release the children when they arrived. Do you remember the Suicide Pact? Due to the standoff with the family, the Fresno police were called in. The phone call that was called in stated that there was some kind of child custody issue at play, so they headed out to see what was happening. Well, bystanders would swear they heard gunshots inside the compound, but the police did not hear it. They would finally breach after a 2-hour standoff. When they did, they would find 9 bodies inside, with 2 being Marcus's daughters and 7 other children. The bodies were stacked up on top of each other in a pile of bodies and clothing. They were so mixed up that it would take the police a few hours to finally get all of the bodies separated and get the death toll. Each body was shot through the eye. The bedroom that the bodies were found in also had 10 old caskets, although they were unused. All of the other children and other family members under Marcus's control would survive this attack. Police would place Marcus Wesson under arrest on the suspicion of homicide. He was 57 years old at the time. Not long after 10 p.m., the night of the police would begin to remove the bodies from the home. Some of the bodies were so small they were carried out in small body bags in the arms of police. The victims would range from 20, 17, and then between the ages of 1 and 8. The names of these victims were not released, and neither was the cause of the death at first. We do know their names now, so I will list them off. It's Sabrina April Wesson, Elisabeth Wesson, Isabella Wesson, Aviv Wesson, Jonathan Wesson, Sidonia Wesson, Marcus Wesson, Ethan Wesson, and Jeva Wesson. Marcus would go to trial and be represented by a public defendant in Peter Jonas and Ralph Torres. They would go on to claim that his 25-year-old daughter, Sabrina, committed the murders and then committed suicide. They had found the murder weapon, a .22 caliber gun, on her body, and there was DNA found on the gun, so this could be true. But we know the brutal violence and control the family had, and also the Suicide Pact. Now, while the jury would state that they did not think Marcus fired the fatal shots, they still convicted him of the murder. This leads credence to the Suicide Pact and his control over the family. As is so often the case with these awful abusers, many of the surviving family would stand behind him during the trial. Marcus would be convicted of 9 counts of first-degree murder on June 17, 2005. But this is not all he was charged with, as he was found guilty of 14 counts of forcible rape and sexual molestation of 7 of his daughters and nieces. Marcus would be given the death penalty verdict on June 27, 2005, and at the time of this podcast, he is still sitting in a prison cell, and as far as I can tell, he is still rotting in the cell at San Quentin State Prison. Well, how does this rank on the horrible parent scale? Rape of minors, incest, serious violence, and either murder or forced murder. Seriously, fuck this guy. That's my story.
Mm-hmm.
One of the worst parents I've ever heard of, I think.
He's definitely in like the top 5 I've heard of.
And he looks like it too. Like, he looks like scum.
Yeah.
All right, we'll get ready for the next one. This episode has been brought to you by Best Fiends. Has social distancing and self-isolation started to tear at the fabric of your mind? Are you talking to the bugs in your home? Do you look into your garden and dream of the day you can kill the dastardly slugs? Are you hearing colors yet? Well, if the bugs have been talking back, maybe it's time to open up Best Fiends and start kicking those devious slugs' butts. All you have to do is match colored tiles, and the slugs will drop like flies. The better the combos, the better the chance of earning things like bombs that do even more damage. Some levels will even have light bulbs and other things to interact with that will make it easier or harder to beat the challenges in front of you. But when you kill enough slugs and meet your goals, you will collect resources you can use to make your bugs bigger and stronger. I'm currently on level 453, and the bugs keep telling me to fight the good fight. For Easter, they even have an Easter egg hunt, and when you meet the goals, you will gain prizes. The more you collect, the more rewards you receive. This is the only game I have on my phone, and I make sure to pull it out daily to keep the slugs at bay. It is just too much fun not to load up on the phone, and I love the fact that you do not need an internet connection to play. This isn't a hardcore game like so many gamers play, but just a casual puzzle game. You can come and go like you please and enjoy the bugs, the slugs, and the cool look of the game. I used to play other games on my phone, but this is now the only game I load up. Engage your brain with fun puzzles and collect tons of cute characters. Trust me, with over 100 million downloads, this 5-star rated mobile puzzle game is a must-play. Download Best Fiends free on the Apple App Store or Google Play. That's friends without the R. Best Fiends.
So for my story, I've chosen a beer called Troll Juice because
I'm a troll.
My story is about a pair of subhuman monsters named David and Louise Turpin.
Oh, I thought it was David and Goliath.
No.
Damn.
They're fucking horrible. So this is a Parallel 49 beer, as
It's got
I
a really
said,
funky can.
called Troll Juice. Yeah, the can is great. You'll have to go check out the website to see a picture or just go buy it. It says, "We've had a small troll infestation for years. These diminutive pests cause nothing but grief, so we put them to use. From their home in Scandinavia, they brought us Kveik yeast."
Kveik, yeah. Kveik.
Help me out, Mike. Great.
No one really agrees with the proper pronunciation, but Kveik.
If you're Scandinavian, please feel free to let us know. It gives this beer a quality unlike anything else. Enjoy this hazy, fruity, spicy IPA, and remember to feed the trolls.
Drool. Just like a troll would. This is definitely a hazy. This is definitely super, super murky orange with a white head. Mm-hmm. Smells like tropical fruit and a little bit of citrus, what you'd expect on this style of beer.
Nice.
Yep. Lots
Fruity.
of pineapple, maybe some mango, some citrus, maybe a little bit of orange juice. There's a little hint of something in behind that might be like some citrus pith or something. Basically no bitterness. It's just like alcoholic fruit juice.
Yeah. I quite like it.
7.8% alcohol does not taste like it.
No, it tastes like maybe 4.5, 5. What do you think, Nina?
It's not too bad, actually.
You can crush that still?
I think I'll drink what's in this can, yes.
You can crush that tiny little bit.
I like it.
I love it. This is really good. It's probably one of the better beers I've had from P49 in a while. It's really good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I actually like, what the hell's his name now? Who just hosted the, was it the Oscars? Is it Ricky Gervais? What did he just do?
Golden
He does
Globes.
the Golden Globes. Yeah.
So Ricky Gervais was recently asked about his favorite beer. And, like, I don't know where he's from, but he's definitely, I think he's back, is he in Europe, or where is he from?
He's from England, isn't he?
England, yeah. And they asked him what his favorite beer was, and he's like, I'm not sure, but I remember when I was in Vancouver, there was this beer called Gypsy Tears.
Oh, wow.
That was, like, my favorite beer I'd ever had.
Wow.
So, someone let P49 know. It's now called Ruby Tears. It's been changed. But when P49 found out about it, they fired it off on social media saying that if Ricky Gervais would say what his favorite Canadian charity was, that a portion of all sales from Ruby Tears would go towards that charity. I don't know how long it was for, but this year.
Right.
And he picked an animal sanctuary, I think in Ontario. But
That's awesome.
It's really cool. Like, he picked P49 out of any brewery in North America or the world as his favorite beer.
Super random, but cool.
So cool.
So I was curious after you said that what part of England he was from, and it says he's from a suburb of Reading, Berkshire. Sorry. But it says his father is from Ontario.
There you go.
Which I definitely didn't
idea.
fucking know. So that's awesome.
There you go. All right, well, let's get into this. I just wanted to... It's just kind of a random fact, but I thought it was
That
kind
is
of
really
cool
cool.
that out of any brewery in the world, when he was asked about his favorite beer, he pointed out that beer from Vancouver.
That's awesome.
Cool.
And obviously by the name, you know the beer as well, so.
Oh, yeah. It's it's a good beer. It's not an exceptional beer to me.
Good, not great, yeah.
Yeah, it's is it a red ale? I forget. But it's just a kind of a standard core beer, but it's not a bad beer at all. Mm-hmm. But it's still cool that he thought that was the best beer he'd ever had from a brewery in Vancouver. It's kind of cool.
Definitely.
I'd probably drink Troll Juice 5 out of 7 days, but,
Yeah.
Still really cool.
Okay, so David Allen Turpin was born October 17th, 1961. Louise Anna Turpin was born May 24, 1968. Obviously, when she was born, her last name wasn't Turpin, but it didn't have her maiden name. But we'll get to her parents' names later, so okay. They first met in 1978 when David was 17 and Louise was 10.
Oh, fucking hell.
Yeah.
Another one of these wonderful parents.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
That could be totally innocent if it wasn't for the fact that they married 6 years later in Parisburg, Virginia, when she was 16 and he was 23.
That's still fucking disgusting.
It's not right, yeah.
No.
Her parents were not happy, especially her father, who was a pastor.
Jesus.
David and Louise were believers in the Quiverful movement and Pentecostalism. Do you guys know the Quiverful?
What is that? What was that TV show?
No.
23andMe or
Yep,
some shit?
Yep.
That fucking scary family.
Right, so that's the belief that God will give you as many children as you should have, and therefore any form of contraceptive or whatever is any birth control whatsoever.
I know
is
what
not
it is.
allowed.
I'm just thinking 23andMe is a DNA testing.
What's
Oh,
that?
right.
Oh, sorry,
It's,
what the hell is that show?
I know exactly.
You're right.
It's the Duggards.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
And counting.
Yeah, you're right. Sorry.
Yeah, 23andMe is like DNA
Sorry,
tests.
I was so close.
Yeah.
19 Kids and Counting is probably the current name.
No, they started at 19 and then it moved up to 20.
There you go.
Something,
So
yeah.
I'm not so wrong.
yeah.
19 Kids and Counting.
Thanks for the correction, Nina.
Yes, and also I'd like to say that there was actually some talk of child abuse and child sex stuff
One of the
in
sons.
this family. So
One of the sons with the daughters, yes.
yeah,
So when I was researching this, I was like, I think I know what the quiverful movement is, but I'm not 100%. So I Googled it, and it was a picture of that family.
Yeah.
It was a picture of the Duggars. Duggars, what is
Duggars.
it?
Duggars.
Is it Duggars?
I think so, yeah.
There's two. Okay, well, whatever.
I've seen a couple episodes of the show. I think it was Duggars.
It's Duggars. I know this for a fact.
Okay, thanks, Nina.
Thank you.
Yeah, so it's just, like I said, the belief that God will give you as many children as you should have, and therefore you shouldn't use any form of birth control or not even any sort of planning.
No contraception, nothing.
Nothing.
Yeah.
Not even, like I said, planning, like avoidance of...
Sexy times.
Yeah, don't avoid having sex when she's most fertile or anything like that. That's not okay. So David and Louise had their first child in 1981. By 2000, they had moved to Rio Vista, Texas, with their 8 children. They lived in a rural area with, really, there was only one neighboring house, and it was like down their road and across the street. There were times when the neighbors suspected that the Turpins were more than just a little bit odd. The children were rarely seen outside, and when they were unclean and very pale.
It's a bad sign.
Yeah. A neighbor later reported that one of the young girls explained her comparatively clean hands by saying, quote, "You wash to the wrist or else you're wasting water."
What?
So that you only wash your hands to the wrist, and that's all you wash. And anything, if you're cleaning anything beyond that, it's a waste of water.
I don't think that's how that works.
I think it wouldn't do well in the world right now with the way things are going.
Yeah. The Turpins had 4 more kids during their 10 years in Rio Vista. The eldest daughter escaped one night and ran out for help. She was picked up by a neighbor not far down the road. Unfortunately, because of the lack of education and nutrition, the neighbor thought she was much younger and mentally challenged, so she just took her home to her parents. After this happened, the Turpins put on a bit of a display by allowing the children out in the yard more often, but after a couple of weeks, things just went back to normal.
Of course, yeah.
They weren't allowed out of the house anymore. In 2010, as the depravity was increasing in the house and local suspicion was rising, the Turpins decided to move the family to Paris, California. When the family left Rio Vista, their neighbors went to see the house that they had lived in. They were horrified by what they found. Filth everywhere. Urine and feces were found all over the house. There were heaps of garbage all over the property, as well as a few dead family pets that they'd never bothered to bury.
Holy fuck, that's gross. Hoarder.
There were padlocks on the fridge, cabinets, closets, and even on the children's beds.
On their beds.
On their beds.
Well, I mean, at least they don't get beaten for eating peanut butter like in my story if there's a padlock on the fridge, but still fucking terrifying.
Yeah. Well,
I'd rather get beaten for eating and not eat, but still get beaten.
Yeah, no shit.
The mattresses were so worn through that they could barely be called mattresses, and it was clear that the children weren't always allowed to leave the bed to go use the washroom.
Jeez.
What they didn't find was their way to a phone to notify the police. They didn't bother notifying the authorities at all. I'm not saying that it's their fault, of course, but
Did they even have access to a phone properly?
The neighbors, yeah.
Absolutely.
The neighbors, yeah. I don't understand how you could find a house in that state, know that there's kids living there, and not report it to somebody.
Yeah.
Right? Say something. Especially the padlocks on the beds. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah, please explain those.
So the Turpins settled in their new home and continued the wretched treatment of their children. Free and clear in California, Louise gave birth to a 13th child. The horrible treatment continued. The neighbors rarely, if ever, saw the children, and when they did, the kids didn't speak or move. Quote, "It was like children whose only defense was to be invisible." End quote.
Wow.
One neighbor who worked the night shift and frequently arrived back home at 3 a.m. saw the children marching in laps around an upstairs room of the house.
Fuck.
Never reported it. never said anything.
That's nuts. Like, I would have reported that shit
But what
right
do you
away.
report something like that? What, their kids are awake at 3 a.m.? Walking around in
Something
the
doesn't
house?
seem right.
If you never see children outside and then you see all of the children marching around a room at 3 in the morning, what's
Children
the
shouldn't
harm
be
in
up at
calling
that
children's
time.
services and being like, I think maybe you should go look at this house?
Yeah, I know.
Because if there's something wrong, they'll find out
There's
there's
no
something
problem.
wrong. But if there's something wrong, they'll find out there's something wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of what ifs, though, right? Like,
Oh, yeah.
in hindsight, it's always easy to say back, like, oh, should have, could have, what, right? But
That's
I'm telling
fair.
you, if I didn't know any of this, and how at this day and age, do you really know your neighbors or anything? No.
Well, it's getting hard nowadays when everyone's living in condos and townhomes. And
Well, that's what I mean,
Yeah.
right? Like, if I never see a kid and then the next thing I hear is a kid screaming next door because they're crying of something, my first thought is going to be like, oh, I should call the police. What's going on? It's like, oh, they have a kid who is whining because of whatever, right? Like,
if I don't hear a kid running upstairs during the day at some fucking point, I probably would call the cops. Like, why isn't the annoying child running around?
but would you
wrong.
actually, like,
No.
if you knew they lived there and you just don't hear the kid from the, you wouldn't though, right? Like,
Probably hit the floor
No.
trying to
I mean,
find out
he's
why
just
they're-
joking because
Yeah.
he's used to the kids upstairs here making so
no,
much
no,
noise.
but what I mean, like, if you know that the family is upstairs
Yeah.
and then magically just never see the kids again.
Well, I've
would you
never
call?
seen the child, I don't think.
No,
just
I'm
know it
sorry.
lives there.
I'm just saying, like, out of perspective, if magically their kids just weren't there anymore and you just saw the parents, would that strike a chord? Like, oh my God, what happened to the kids? Should I ask the parents? Like,
Yeah.
you know, I know you had it, like, I don't know, right? Probably no, you wouldn't. You wouldn't do anything about it.
Yeah, probably not. I like to think I would, but probably not.
I don't know. I think I would. But, I mean, I've called the police on my neighbors.
We did too
5
back
times.
when I lived in Surrey, and we had them run at our house with BB guns and threaten us. So, yeah. It's nice when you've got some drug dealer neighbors. Good old days in Surrey.
That's why you spin it around and you become the drug dealer.
No.
Anyway, like you're saying, you know, it's fine and dandy. And hindsight's 2020. And we have information that this neighbor didn't have, etc. Right?
Yeah.
So David and Louise started planning to uproot the family again, likely because of what the neighbors had seen. And, you know, they're at this point, they'd been there long enough to be worried that they would get reported soon.
Yeah.
So they were going to move the family to Oklahoma. But on January 14th of 2018, one of the daughters escaped out of a window with a disconnected cell phone. She ran away from the home and around the corner and called 911. Because even with a disconnected cell phone, you can always call
Yeah.
911.
How the fuck did she get a hold of even a disconnected cell phone? Wow.
Well, this was... What year was it? This was in, like,
Well, it's not
mid-2000s
even
by
that.
this point.
But this family, the way it was, I'm surprised she could get a hold of one of those.
Her dad
So-
was an engineer. I know I haven't mentioned that, but
okay.
her dad was an engineer. It was just the kids that didn't get
Yeah.
all this stuff.
Okay.
The daughter was 17 at the time, and she called, but you can go ahead and you can find this 911 call online. We don't really do the 911 audio clip thing, but
Sometimes,
if you
but-
want to hear it, go ahead. She's 17 at the time, but if you listen to this call, she sounds like she's 10 years old.
That's
Like,
that hurts
she's-
my heart. Yeah.
She sounds so, like, her vocabulary and everything, she sounds so young, but she's 17.
But that's heartbreaking when they're that old and they sound that young because they've just been so deprived.
Held back, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so we're not going to provide the link, but I mean, you can Google it. You know how Google works.
The Googs.
The police arrived at the Turpin home and found that all of the children, except the youngest, who was a toddler, she was 2 at the time, were malnourished. The eldest daughter was actually 29 years old at the time and weighed 82 pounds.
Fuck
my
me,
God.
that is not okay.
7 of the kids were actually adults, but were so underfed and uneducated that they looked and acted like children. The 17-year-old that made the call had the IQ of a 6-year-old.
Jeez.
There was feces everywhere, as the kids were often not allowed to use the washroom. They were fed once a day and allowed to shower only once a year. They were frequent.
Holy fuck. I don't like missing one a day, the odd times, every second day. Like, that's so gross.
They were frequently chained or tied to their beds, sometimes for weeks or months at a time. Hundreds of journals written by the children about their experience in the house over the previous years were recovered from the home. David and Louise were charged with multiple counts of torture, false imprisonment, child abuse, and cruelty to a dependent adult. At the trial, some of the children read statements. What surprised me about this was that their statements weren't just about how horrible their parents were. It was things about, like, just the stench in the house was so bad that it was difficult to breathe at times. But they didn't specifically say this was the parents' fault or anything. They just said it was horrible.
I guess they didn't know any better.
Yeah. One of the kids said that they were sure their parents loved each other and that their mother had loved them. Quote, I remember our mother sitting in her recliner saying that she didn't know what to do. She didn't want to use rope or chain, but was afraid her children were taking in too much sugar and caffeine.
Okay.
I don't understand that.
Neither do I, yeah.
I don't understand the whole thing of them not showering and using the restroom. Like, as the parent, why do you want to be around that filth? They also lived in that house.
Yeah, I don't
Let them
know.
at least use, maybe, like, you can go to the bathroom once a day. Not that that's okay.
No,
But,
I know
like,
what you mean.
come on.
They sound like gross hoarders.
Yeah, they're disgusting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it should go without saying that no moderately decent parent considers using ropes to deal with a child who has had too much sugar. And where would the sugar come from anyway, considering they're allowed to eat once a day?
Yeah,
and it was the
exactly.
parents that were in charge of what they were eating. So, like,
Yeah,
the fuck are you giving them?
Yeah.
That one time a day that you're allowed to eat where they have too much sugar.
Well, it's just bullshit.
Yeah. Another one of the children said that she saw her mom slowly be changed by their father and was relieved to have escaped the house when she did before her father changed her as well. Louise herself had a truly horrible childhood. Her mother, Phyllis, would take money from older men in exchange for time alone with Louise and her sister, Teresa.
Ugh.
This started when they were very young. According to Teresa, it wasn't just strangers, it was their own grandfather as well.
Oh my god.
This was definitely part of the reason that Louise married so young.
To get out of that?
Yeah, she just wanted out of the nightmare that she was raised in. At first, when Louise got married and left, she and David were still deeply involved in the church. Louise's brother and sister still saw her and the kids, but things started to change. They stopped attending church, and then Louise cut them off almost completely. Teresa has only met the 4 eldest of the kids, of the 13 children.
What?
She's only met 4 of them. She's talked to the other children, but very rarely and only briefly. And only, like, through, like, video chat or, like, on the phone very briefly. But she's never met them.
Wow.
With 13 kids to take care of, Teresa didn't find it particularly odd when Louise always said that she was just too busy to get together.
Yeah.
Especially, they lived in different states. Neither of them were particularly well off. In 2011, David filed for bankruptcy. They had racked up $240,000 in credit card debt. The bankruptcy documents listed his income as $140,000 a year.
Sign me up.
Yeah. He was also listed as the principal of the Sandcastle Day School, which he operated out of his home with 13 children attending.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's a load of shit.
Yeah, must be a lot of profit coming in from that company.
The year after they claimed bankruptcy, he retired. So what the fuck?
Yeah, if you're bankrupt, you definitely do not have the money to retire.
Yeah, I don't think that's how that works. You claim bankruptcy and then retire when you're 51? What the hell? I want to retire when I'm 51.
That's soon, right?
I mean,
Just kidding.
it's not soon. It's not like he was spending the $140,000 a year on feeding his children.
No.
Nope.
or, getting ready for them to go to school or school at all at any point.
Yeah.
When both of Louise's parents died in 2016, her siblings thought it was a bit odd that Louise didn't come to their deathbeds when she was specifically asked for.
Yeah.
But she also didn't attend their funeral services, but David did. So they definitely thought that was weird. But that wasn't really enough on its own for them to take any sort of action. But I don't really understand that, considering they were always being told that the family was too busy to get together, like to see the kids at all or whatever, and then her husband shows up and they haven't seen any of them in
years,
like a decade, and then her husband has time to come.
Yeah, it seems weird,
and she doesn't. I don't get it.
For her parent.
Yeah, it's sketchy for sure.
The whole thing is sketchy, yeah.
David and Louise initially pled not guilty, but changed their plea to guilty of 14 felony charges on February 22nd, 2019, in order to avoid a trial. The charges were as follows: 1 count of torture, 4 counts of false imprisonment, 6 counts of cruelty to adult dependents, and 3 counts of willful child cruelty. April 19, 2019, the couple was sentenced to life imprisonment with the possibility of parole after 25 years, which is obviously not nearly enough time, in my opinion at least, but realistically the chances of them getting parole is
unlikely.
Like,
pretty
how old were
darn
they again at
slim.
that point?
He was 51, so 25 will be 75, or even older from when the sentence came.
And that's
so.
when they can start to try for parole.
Yeah. So he was 51 in... He was 50 when they claimed bankruptcy, 51 when he retired a year later, so he's 58.
Oh, even better.
And then plus
Yeah.
25.
And then
So the
plus
likelihood
25
he
years.
will never get out of prison.
I should hope
him
not.
and his wife should
Yeah.
never get out of prison.
No, they shouldn't.
Yeah. I really wanted to find some way of making this horrible story slightly less wretched, so I looked into what the kids are doing now. The 7 adult-aged children spent 2 months at the Corona Regional Medical Center shortly after they were rescued, and they grew to love the people that cared for them while they were there, but eventually they had to move out. They all lived very close to each other and visited as much as possible. And when I was doing my research, what I could find was they were all in college at the time.
Oh, nice. That's really good
So
to
they'd
see.
all done all the tests and education required to get them caught up and going during that 2 months time that they were being taken care of.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And the 6 underage children were taken to Riverside County Regional Medical Center for treatment, and they tried to find a home for all of the kids to stay together, but 6 kids is really hard, so they were eventually split into 2 homes, but they stay in touch via Skype, so they still get to visit, which is nice. David and Louise are prohibited from coming within 100 yards of any of their children or establishing any form of contact, even electronic contact, so no email, no Skype, nothing. Nothing. And I really hope this afford the kids the time that they need to find themselves as people and not to be further brainwashed by these fucking monsters.
Absolutely.
Well, it sounds like with them going and getting their educations and stuff, they'll finally be able to be opened up to the world, right?
Yeah.
Not just their parents' abuse.
Exactly.
Totally. I mean, it's not even open to the world. It's actually just like having a fucking life, right?
No, yeah, but that's what I mean. Like opening up to the real world, which is not always a great place, but it's still better to be open to the whole world and know the whole world than to be stuck in that shit-filled home.
Oh, but I'd so much rather know the world and make my own stupid decisions and then deal with my consequences, not have someone else dictate every second of my life and have no fucking control of anything whatsoever.
Absolutely, positively.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so that's my
you for
story.
sharing.
I hate them, and somehow mine was the least bad. I can't believe.
Well,
So,
I mean, in mine and yours, everyone survived.
yeah.
Mine sure didn't.
Well, I guess I did have the one child who died right after childbirth, but I feel like that's obviously, I don't know.
I had child murder, so yeah, it's a little worse.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for tuning in. You can find us on all the social medias at Brewcrime. You can go to our website, brewcrime.com. You can check out our store that we keep forgetting to mention at brewcrime.threadless.com. You can buy things like t-shirts and beach towels and phone cases and all kinds of crazy stuff. Maybe even if you want to get our logo on your
Skateboard.
shower curtain
Why
or
not?
skateboard. Yeah. Especially shower curtain, because that's weird. You can email us if you want to get in touch with us. Send us ideas for cases or whatever at brewcrime@pacificbeerchat.com. And we would like to shout out our Patreon supporters, because without our Patreon supporters, we couldn't keep making the show better. So go to patreon.com/brewcrime. So shout out to 3 Beers In Podcast, Amber, Ange, Daniela, Nina's mom, the Faves of Our Lives podcast, and True Crime Nana.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You're the best. Cheers.
Bye.
Brewcrime's intro was created by Mike using Creative Commons Attribution licensed audio from purple-planet.com, soundbible.com, and freesoundeffects.com. Logo design was by Ben Greenberg. All cases and stories were written by Beck, Nina, and Mike, and our sources are put into the show notes for each episode. We always want to give credit to the people that research the cases we talk about. Check out our store at brewcrime.threadless.com, where you can purchase swag like t-shirts, phone cases, beach towels, and all kinds of cool stuff. We can also be found on your favorite podcast apps, our hosts, Spreaker.com, or Brewcrime.com, as well as at Brewcrime on Twitter, at Brewcrime on Facebook, at facebook.com/groups/Brewcrime. Thanks for listening. This has been a production of Pacific Beer Chat.
While you may think that history is, vaguely interesting, the truth is it's fun and metal AF.
Echoes of the past are still reverberating through our world today, and Body Count is here to show you how our shared history affects your life on the daily.
Whether you know it or not. So, are you past the point of higher education?
Feel like you didn't learn anything from your high school history teacher?
Or just didn't give a flying crap about it?
Are you tired of always missing out on the yellow history pie piece in Trivial Pursuit?
Are you the horror of all your friends' game nights?
Did you once proudly announce that Napoleon Bonaparte was a super short little nutsack?
When in reality, he was an average-sized nutsack.
Have you been thinking about living under a faulty dam?
Or perhaps an active volcano?
Well, we have good news. It's not too late for you or your homeowner's insurance.
Come on over and listen to Body Count, the podcast that explores death and disaster through the ages with only one rule.
Someone, or usually a lot of someones, dies!
Because history doesn't repeat itself, it rhymes.
A proud member of the MSE Podcast Network.
Hey guys, my name is Rashad Jones, and I am the host of Blood and Fire Water Podcast, a podcast where we shoot tequila and chase it with a case of murder. Some cases may have been covered in other podcasts before, and that's okay. Allow us to just guide you back down that rabbit hole as we re-examine the people, the places, and the things about your favorite cases. You can reach out to us on Instagram at Blood and Fire Water Podcast and Twitter at BFW Pod Squad. You got a case you want to suggest? Shoot an email to bloodandfirewater@gmail.com. Blood and Fire Water Podcast does contain explicit language and graphic content not suitable for all ages, so listeners' discretion is advised. Stay alert and stay alive.
Later on, I'll talk about it, but one of the heights in the ceilings, well, actually, no, I'm not going to talk about it, so you guys can hear it later, because it'll make a little bit more sense with more context.
Let's start from the beginning with this. Let's start from the beginning. Blah, I can't speak. The family would continue to grow as a gun on her body.
Excuse me. Do you guys want to pour stuff in your cups first, and I'll take this last bit out of the can?
Okay.
I forgot my cup. Because I'm an idiot.
Idiot.
Oh, I need to put my feet up.
I'll take more if it's there, but I'm just not sure how much it's going to split into 3. I'll wait. We're missing all the sun today, you guys.
Sorry.
Hey, listeners. It was such a beautiful day today. It was sunny all day, and here we are recording. You're welcome.
We're just hiding from COVID-19. That's what it is.
Do you want to do a little bit more in yours?
It doesn't matter. Take however much you want.
I don't have a cup, so I'm going to drink out of it.
Okay. There you go, sister.
Dankeschön.
Good.
All right.
Everybody's ready? David Allen Turpin was born October 17th, 1961. One sec. I didn't adjust this.
No problem.
I'm going to do that again. Enough. I'm not saying that it's their fault. I'm not saying it's the neighbor's fault. Ooh. What just happened?
Something dropped.
Yeah, that's fine.
Just got like super loud in my left ear and
It's funny,
nothing.
mine didn't actually make any extra noise.
Well, how's your sound?
I can't hear anything out of
No?
my right ear.
She's unplugged.
Yeah, there you go. Yours unplugged a bit.
Is that better?
Yeah. In 2010, nope, that's the wrong page. Sorry, delete that. Sorry, dudes.
And dudettes.
Yeah.
It's a gender
Jeez.
non-specific term coming from my mouth.
I know.